African Americans have called our nation to greatness.
The African American community stood up again.
From our earliest days, Black history has been American history, with scientists and inventors who helped unleash American innovation.
This is Black Men Network, the organization of strong, intelligent Black men. Human trafficking, trafficking in persons, forced labor, all cover terms under the umbrella of the new age of slavery. Since the signing of the 13th Amendment, America has put an end to the practice of slavery. And because America is a global leader, many countries soon followed by putting an end to their own practice of slavery. At least we thought. Places like Russia, China, some areas of the Middle East, and Mexico have been known for trafficking in persons. Human trafficking, trafficking in persons, and forced labor all work together. In a country with less restrictive laws, a group would prey on or capture their impoverished people. These people would then be sold to a person, group, or corporation. The people are bought in one location, then transported to another location to work for as little pay as possible or no pay at all. Some countries even use their own laws to disguise their practice of slavery, often calling their people prisoners or criminals. These terms are frequently used to give legitimacy to their practice of forced labor. In other places, companies have made a lucrative business out of selling women. It's called mail-order bride. It's where a man goes on the internet, orders his perfect woman, then has her shipped to the place of his choice. The prime targets of these disgusting practices are women, children, and the poor. Not something you would really expect to see in America. At least we thought. Currently, there are only 2 states in the United States that are regarded as slave states: Mississippi and Maryland. That's right, Maryland, a state so close to the nation's capital, you can barely tell when you have crossed from one to the other. Maryland has the highest incarceration rate of Black men in the country, almost twice the national average. At one point, almost 70% of all of the people incarcerated in Maryland were Black. Oftentimes, when we hear people referencing the numbers for the incarceration rate, they're not talking about the entire nation. They're talking about this one state. For years, Maryland has made use of 2 practices: target and terrorize, and incentivize incarceration. Because Maryland's prison system is run by corporations that get paid based on the number of people that are housed in their facilities, key people are incentivized to keep the incarceration rate as high as possible. Money, grants, funding, donations, etc. Combine target and terrorize with incentivize incarceration, then throw in a little bit of policing for profit. Now you have a ring of slavery at the corporate level that's supported by the state. This is a practice that we at Black Men Network will stop. We started by making contact with all of the candidates running for office in Maryland. Nancy Wallace agreed to do an in-person interview. This is what she had to say.
We have the highest incarceration rate of Black men in America.
Yeah, it is absolutely sad.
Badge of shame.
It is, very much is. And speaking of badges, right, a lot of people have been saying that this is by design. And there's absolutely no way that something like this could go on for decades and not be addressed. So, do you have any plans for addressing this? And not just addressing it, but putting an end to it completely?
On my website, there's a section under the issues button for community peace/police violence. And
right.
I have a whole set of programs recommendations in there. And so that's one set of programs and commitments. I think obviously has several factors influencing it, and so the solutions are going to be multiple at the same time.
Right.
The first thing is that I think we have to re-examine the hiring standards for all of our police.
Right.
And I would support every single police officer, state and county in Maryland, going through another review in terms of revised hiring standards, which would include psychological testing for tolerance and patience.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So as far as like the targeting and terrorizing the black men, right? We're in Maryland right now, and I have yet to see a police officer running around here. However, you know, in a lot of predominantly black neighborhoods, areas where there is a high black population, you see round the clock police presence. And we wanted to not necessarily stop, but we wanted to stop, right? It doesn't seem realistic to myself or anyone in our organization that all of the crime is just in black neighborhoods. That just doesn't seem right? And we want to know, why is it that someone would think it's okay to target and terrorize black men? Not only that, but then make sure that they get incarcerated so that they can go to prison, right?
Well, I think we got a couple of sources of that. One is the basic schools to prison pipeline we've got in the high schools, where having police in high schools leads to a higher arrest and incarceration rate of the juveniles, and it begins to put things on their record that then lead to tougher sentences if there's problems later on.
Right.
So we don't support police per se, certainly in schools. Second of all, we have to have a mental health response capability in the police departments or parallel to it. And right now, people call 911, they say, I need help, and we send an officer with a gun.
Right.
We should send people out in pairs. The second person shouldn't necessarily be a police officer. The second person should be a mental health specialist.
Right.
There's usually a mental health component in virtually every type of violence.
Right.
And those police should be the backup for the mental health officers.
Wow. That's a solid plan, right? And I think you are the first candidate that we ever talked to that has a solid plan like that, something that we can align with, and it really makes sense, right? You said that the school to prison pipeline, is that what you call it?
Yeah.
Tell us more about that.
Well, a kid gets into trouble in high school. A lot of kids do, from wealthy areas and not wealthy areas.
Right.
And the wealthy kids don't get involved with the police system. They don't have it called. But there's a sense of a cultural problem with a sense of threat in black communities. And the police will be called in more easily.
Right.
And statistics show they will also write up the kids for a tougher offense. And they will go into the justice system. And then you start getting marks on your record before you're 18. And then, first of all, it is demoralizing for the child to be involved in the criminal justice system. It's not a caring, loving place.
No.
No.
Not at all.
And then, if there's a problem later on, the young adult already has one or two or three strikes on their record that the judge can see. So they end up getting harsher penalties.
Right.
What we have to have is a sense of future, so that our high school kids, where we tend to have the problem starting, sometimes it's younger, but right now our black youth don't feel like they have a future that is achievable and solid and pleasant and safe. They don't have a good life in their vision for themselves. Or if they do, they say, well, I'm going to have a lot of risks along the way. It's going to be really tough, and they'll claw their way up and maybe get a good job. So one of the programs that we're going to propose is academies, training academies in high school.
Right.
Basically, you take 16 and 17-year-olds and keep them inside all day with, trigonometry and stuff like that. It was pretty frustrating. But if we have training academies where we reach out to the unions and to businesses and we develop curriculum with them, we give students an option of doing training along with academic preparation. And now, with a green governor, with myself, we've always supported free public college.
Right.
So both 2-year and 4-year colleges will be free. So they can go these training academies, and then they can either get a job and start working, or they can go to college, and then after college they'll have some experience and training already. And this is the idea of one of our Green Party members named Paul Pumphrey, who's worked a lot with this in the unions, and he's come up and we have a position paper on that, that whole concept. And part of it would be public service. It's to make the service of, whether it be in childhood.
So here's a big question, right? Maryland has, because of the targeting and terrorizing the black men, because of the extremely high incarceration rate, which is twice the national average, Maryland has been regarded as a slave state. How we got here is also like mind-boggling. How did we get to this point where, you know, things like this were allowed to continue and no one stopped it, right? Is there a plan for you to look at the system that started this and put it to an end?
Definitely. It will stop with me as governor.
Right.
The first thing we will stop is the cash bond system.
What is that?
The idea that someone is, if they have enough money to post bond and to pay the private corporate fees for electronic monitoring device on themselves, for instance, for home detention. If you have that much money, then you can get out of jail before the trial. You'll be out on bail.
Really?
But the principle that innocent until proven guilty is completely violated by our current cash bail system.
Right.
And the also called the bond industry. That bond industry gives a lot of campaign contributions.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
It's a big problem.
Right.
So
follow the money, huh?
Yeah. So there are people, lots of people. So the poor basically don't get to live that American value of innocent until proven guilty.
Because they can't afford it.
Right. So they're going to stay in jail for what? 6 months, 2 months, however long it takes for their case to come up. So that's enslavement even without a trial.
Right.
And flat out needs to stop. If the person is a threat of violence, is enough of a threat that they need to be restrained, then they should not be given bail.
Right.
And they should be treated decently and humanely in incarceration. I won't even say prison, because I think our prisons need a big reform, and the fact that a lot of American prisons, the new prisons, are being built with a very high % of solitary confinement cells.
Wow.
Is atrocious.
Wow.
I want
so
to
they're
look
expecting it, huh?
Yeah, and that's just torture. I mean, if you can imagine just having to live for months by yourself in your bedroom with nothing, that will cause mental illness even if you didn't have it in the first place.
Yeah, absolutely.
So the whole prison system is right now is just corrupt and littered with exploitation of prisoners and the poor by a private corporation. So reforming the cash bail system. We also have very inconsistent bail provisions among the counties in Maryland.
Really?
Yeah, some counties allow you to get out on bail, and the county will pay the private monitoring fee for the monitoring bracelet. So that way, if you're poor, fine, you get bail, you go home, or you actually just get pre-release and go home, and you can live your life, potentially even work, particularly remote from home, and you can work on your defense, you can meet with your lawyer easily, your family, you can take care of your kids, all these things. Other counties will require a 10% of the bail, and they set the bail so high that 10% is a big hunk, which a lot of people won't have. Right. And then you have to pay these corporate monitoring fees. And you have to pay them yourself. The government doesn't. So there's inconsistency throughout the state. And I don't think that's fair. I think we need a flat, fair, similar system, the same system throughout the state, where being in jail or not should not be related to whether you're poor or not.
I absolutely agree.
Take action that matters. That's how you make a difference.